We've got the last
Thank
two
you.
speakers talking about fire compliance, and then Daniel from Dan Ray talking about waterproofing. So we're going to invite Rob Broadhead from 2020 Fire. Are you there, Rob?
I am Sam. How are you?
Hello, nice to see you. So you're going to kind of take us through some of the things that are changing in New South Wales in terms of compliance and what our owners need to be aware of. So I'll hand across to you if that's okay.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Tony. Before for Premier Painting, I thought he made some great points about getting consultants involved.
Yes.
Whether it's painting or fire protection, so often, we quote for something, someone else wins said job, and you go to have a quick look at it because they want it for much less than you, and you realise they did an entirely different specification and scope to what you'd quoted on. And so, I think owners in strata and the like, it's well worth the investment in consultants for whatever your trades that you're engaging, because they'll give one scope that everyone follows, which I think is really, really worthwhile to do that.
That's been the theme of today's conference, actually, Rob, unexpectedly. But it's about the fact that, get the experts in to know what they're doing so that everybody can actually then have a peace of mind about the work that's been done. And that
Yeah,
also leads to your harmonious community, right? So,
exactly right. Yep. So
so
next slide for me, thanks.
yep.
And yeah, so I'm Rob from 2020 Fire. We've been around for about 16 years, and we know a fair bit about fire in apartments. We've been involved in strata, in various other forms all the way through. And I've sat on various strata committees. I've sat on the building commissions, fire safety industry reference group representing apartment owners and strata and the like. Uh, and so I know a fair bit about it. So, and there's a lot going on in this space. There's a lot of regulations in fire protection, but there's been very little regulation of the people and what is done in fire protection over the years. And so, while that possibly has brought the price down in fire protection, which I don't know most people would disagree with, it's meant that a lot of things that should have been being done have not. And fire protection is really important.
So important.
We all believe strongly that it won't happen to me, but it really does happen. There's fires all the time. If you look at the New South Wales Fire and Rescue site, they have specs on how many fires there are every year, and it's in the tens of thousands. So they really do occur, and there's some great videos on YouTube about how long it takes from a fire starting in your regular lounge room, if it was built 50 years ago versus what happens now, and the difference is stark. I think 50 years ago, if you dropped your ciggy on the lounge in the corner when you fell asleep, you had somewhere around 30 minutes before that room became engulfed in fire. These days, with our polyethylene and polypropylene built lounges and plastic things and lithium ion battery powered devices all through there, you've got about 3 minutes from ignition to
Wow.
complete flashover of the room. So your fire protection in apartments is so important. A smoke alarm
Will save your life.
correctly placed in your apartment and working gives you about 50 something percent greater chance of surviving a
Yeah.
fire in your home. So that's why you should
Interesting
care
stats.
about it. So yeah,
Yeah.
interesting stats.
Yeah.
So next
Thank you, Rob.
slide with that. So there's lots of regulations happening, and who's driving it. So, the Building Commission, the Department of Customer Service, we heard from Angus Aberdeen, who was involved in quite a lot of that before he was appointed Commissioner. They're driving the regulation changes. Fair trading is driving the licensing of what we do. Fire and rescue is there to check on whether it's safe and attend if there actually is a fire. Councils are there to enforce those regulations, and the industry does quite a bit in terms of the co-regulation of people involved. So, for those people involved in annual fire safety statements, these days you have to have an accredited practitioner who is co-regulatory accredited by the Fire Protection Association and government combined. And so, moving on, the changes that have occurred this year, in the last couple of years, sorry, we've on your annual fire safety statement, up till a couple of years ago, if there was something wrong with the schedule on there, so the list of the measures that you have, the list of the fire equipment on there, you would have to go through a CDC or a DA to get that changed, which is humongous for a building just to change, one error on a statement. So now we can adjust historical minor errors, in there, and I'll talk about that a bit later on with it. Fire and rescue is getting more involved in design because when with buildings having more and more performance solutions, sometimes those performance solutions where there was 10 of them implemented for a building would leave the building not actually in a safe position because none of those performance solutions had taken into consideration the degradation of safety of when combined with another one and another one and another one. So
A
they're involved in
domino
design to
effect.
make sure they're combined. The Swiss cheese, I think, effect as well. The one that I'll talk mostly about today is maintenance and what we should have always been doing. It's if you're working, if you're in a strata building, you are obligated under that law to maintain the building and maintain the essential fire safety measures anyway, but it's never been written black and white. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly today. And
Right.
there's a few things changing in terms of the AFSS, but we'll talk about what it means for you. So this one here, I won't go into all the details there. Everyone can read it later if they want to. The missing link and the reason why anyone who's bought into brand new buildings in the last 20 something years, part of the reason for that is because the person signing off the fire safety measures at the end of the construction never has had to be accredited, licensed, or otherwise. It could be your sister's friend's dogs, cats, frogs, uncle's daughter that can sign it off, and there's no real connection. It was only really the certifier for the whole building who took the risk on that, and that's so a lot of the building defects issues that we've heard about and seen in the media. That's all come from the fact there's been no certifier for each of the measures at the end. So we're hoping something will happen in this space soon, but nothing currently there. So moving on from that one.
I know you'll lobby for that, Rob.
Oh God, yeah. So this one here is really the key thing to talk about here. So it was supposed to happen this year, but it is definitely happening next year. And so there's an Australian standard called AS 1851 2012, which obviously is a little old now, but nevertheless, they're trying to fix that concurrently. But it's essentially the Australian standard for how you shall inspect and test and maintain your fire protection systems. It's not an installation standard. It doesn't require you to upgrade anything in the building. It's a bit like the pink slip for your car when you get it checked every year. It's not saying you have to suddenly upgrade your car from a Kia to a Mercedes. It's just saying, will it still perform? Is it still working the way it should? As I've said here, arguably it's always been a requirement because as a building owner, you're obligated to maintain the systems and equipment in your building anyway. But it's never been black and white. So as of 13th February next year, it will be black and white. Will be a requirement and it will be enforceable. Okay, so we don't yet know exactly how it'll be enforceable, but I'm suggesting it'll probably be via your councils, just like they enforce the requirement for an annual fire safety statement.
Yeah.
So, the big issues that are going to come out of it really are that a lot of these things have not been taking place over the last 20 years. Most people wouldn't have heard anything about passive fire protection until about 3 years ago, and now everyone's heard about it and hating it. How important it is. As a fire contractor, 5 yearlies. The fastest way for someone in fire protection to lose a fire protection contract with a strata block was to suggest, how about you do your 5 yearly overhauls for your fire protection systems? Really important thing to do, by the way, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. So those will be starting to happen. Fire dampers, they've been historically under-maintained. The standard requires 20% of them to be tested every year and 100% over 5 years. So a lot of buildings have been doing the same 20% every year as they change contractors every year or so.
Yeah.
So that doing all of them over that 5 year period will become a requirement.
Well, the
And
last
for
thing you
complex,
want, sorry, I was going to say, Rob, the last thing you want is to have a fire in your building and there be deaths, and then you haven't been doing the right thing. And so then you are liable to be sued, as well as also not just for the building, but also for any loss of life, right? So
That's exactly
there's
right.
a major motivator here.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not a lawyer in any way, shape, or form, but my understanding that is that there are no limitations to liability in strata. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
and so if you going back to that 5 yearly commentary there, one of the probably the most important 5 yearly that takes place is the 5 yearly hydrostatic test of the fire hydrant system. And what that is you over pressurize the hydrant system, the fire hydrants, and the fire hydrants are only used by the fire brigade. And so you over pressurize it to make sure that when the fire brigade turns up to fight a fire and they plug their fire truck in there and they, possibly accidentally over pressurize it while they're, figuring out what floor it's on and where the guys are and how much pressure they need. It's basically making sure it's not going to, pop a pipe midway through a fire and prevent them from putting a fire out. Or even worse, not being able to get people out of the building, or possibly even worse than that, the firefighters not being safe to be in there because they have no ability to fight the fire that they're almost engulfed in. So the 5 years are really important. There's other stuff in there like for fire detection systems, you have to go through, and particularly for programmable ones or addressable ones, you have to go through and make sure that each and every device actually does what it should do in terms of what if that smoke detector over there doesn't call the fire brigade because the program got changed. So it checks all those really important things. So it's a very important thing to take place.
well, the fire, having written a fire audit, I know how complex it is, right? And, I've actually been in an apartment building and grabbed one of the speakers and pulled it out of the wall, and the actual cables, which were meant to obviously be attached to your fire service board, were only 15 centimetres long, right? So at the end of the day, those sirens are meant to say, get out of the building, right? The smoke alarms are meant to tell you that there is a fire, and then, then there's meant to be, fire doors that shut and all those kinds of things. And so it's a pretty complicated actual process, fitting out an apartment building for fire protection.
Absolutely. I mean, back to your speaker point, the research shows you need 75 decibels at the bed head, as in where you're sleeping on your pillow, to wake a normal, unaffected sleeping adult. Studies show you actually need more than that for children, or if you've been on the Chardonnays, or otherwise prior to that. So, we've just been we're in the middle of doing a big upgrade to an existing building under a fire order building defects issue, where they were lucky to get 50 decibels out of their speakers at the bedheads, and put in perspective, I'm speaking at more than 50 decibels right now if you're in the room with me. So you need quite a bit more to wake. Anyway, with the AFSSs, nothing much has changed in the last year, other than, I think everyone needs to keep on thinking about how they can improve the process of the AFSS. The AFSS is a pain in the bum. We all know that, and the main thing that makes it a pain in the bum, and I guess from all the owners listening, the pain in the bum part is paying for it, but the real pain in the bum for everyone involved in it is the timeline available for it. You have 90 days from to do all of the inspection testing, or sorry, not necessarily inspection testing, but certainly all of the assessment and testing of the fire systems in there. Then you have to, report on that. You have to vote on whatever needs to be done with that. You have to discuss and negotiate and agree or disagree on what needs to proceed with that. You need to then actually do those repairs before it can be signed. And then you need to perhaps get it reassessed by those assessors once the repairs are done, to then be able to sign it off in time. So it's a lot of things to fit, into a very short period of time. And so there's a link here to a document a spreadsheet we put together on that. Any of your members is welcome to use if they like.
Right.
Which is really pre-planning the AFSS. Who's going to be doing exactly which item? When are they going to be doing each and every item? Who is responsible for it? What's the due date for each and every item in there? So
That's
I think
awesome.
if owners understand that it's a really complex process, they, and start and plan for it in advance. And really, you want to be 6 months out, not 3 months. You want to be planning for this and know exactly who will be doing which bit and when a long time before we get to it. Because, pardon the French, shit happens. Mrs.
Yeah.
Smith from Unit 32 doesn't give access. But we didn't get access last year. We need to know whether her smoke alarm works.
Yeah.
We can't be, we don't all want to be, and ditto, if we don't get access in the first weeks, that pushes back the reporting, that pushes back the quoting, and then suddenly, you know, uh, the evil fire company is trying to deliver you a very large quote for the repairs that are needed mere days before the AFSS is due, and so it of course creates tension between all the parties because we're effectively holding over the barrel between do this work or council is going to fine you, and so you don't want to be in that situation. The owners are so good that it's so advised to plan in advance because it reduces the stress of this whole thing so much. So yeah, that's really the key to that one.
Rob, I've got a question from Chuck.
Hmm.
Is there any way that you can extend that timeline if a special levy needs to be raised, or an extension for work?
So in terms of the time frame, no. It's
Yeah.
90 days is 90 days is 90 days. However, most councils um, have some sort of request for a delayed issue of sections of it.
Okay.
And so, if you talk about City of Sydney, they have what's called a stay of PIN application, so a stay of penalty infringement notice. And so they will give you an extension past the 90 days for individual items. So, a common one that's
Okay.
popping up is Sydney Water in their wisdom, thanks to more people, more construction, as well as more load, and therefore more water being drawn, as well as old pipes. The pressures in the water mains are reducing, and therefore it's not uncommon for the fire hydrant systems to no longer meet their flow and pressure requirements because Sydney Water's dropped the pressure. And so
Yeah. Right.
and so it's quite a common one to be able to everything else in the building is fine. We can sign it off and say, yes, here's your kind of uh, not interim, but essentially an interim annual fire safety statement. However, we need to stay a pin for fire hydrants while we work out a solution because we haven't got adequate pressure and flow. So yes, there is, but it doesn't. You won't get out of all of it. You can only do it on an individual schedule item. So I hope that answers it.
I think you should.
Um,
I think Chuck should call you up, Rob, and have a chat.
Most certainly.
So, do you want to take us through this case study quickly?
Yeah. So this one, I'll go through it very quickly. It's really just the build. There's a particular building that we've been working on recently, and it just had not been being maintained correctly for many many years. And the contractor who was engaged to do it, wasn't a member of the industry association, wasn't necessarily accredited in those things. The AFSS has been, not done correctly, and this was found out, not very long before the AFSS was due for this next year, and it's left the owners having to do a lot of work, which has been really expensive in a very short period of time. And so we've done that. We've helped them with it. We've gotten them through it, and we've got that AFSS, underway into council. But it just shows that maintenance is important. If you stop doing maintenance, eventually on your car, eventually it's going to break down, and it's probably going to break down at the least convenient moment when you need to take your kid to the doctor or to the hospital or something like that. And fire protection is no different. It pays to do the maintenance consistently every year because particularly for owners in strata, this is probably your biggest investment in your so why would you want to skimp on maintaining your most expensive and important asset being your home? So that's really key to it. So there's some contact details for our business development manager Kevin, who some of you may have met last week at the awards when he presented in my place. But anything non-site related, give me a call. Happy to help technically on anything like that. So yeah, thank you, Sam, for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Rob. And I think, you're kind of like reinforcing the key messages that have been coming out today. Like if you're actually taking a maintenance approach and it's bite-sized chunks, they're more manageable. If you get lumbered with a massive bill or, some kind of, regulatory requirement, which you're all scrambling to meet, the stress levels go up, tensions go up, costs go up. And that's the quickest way to obliterate a happy community, right? So,
Exactly right. I mean, I often I've banged on this for years, but if you're operating a strata, you have to put a 10-year sinking fund plan together for your entire building. Um, certainly 2025 protection, and I imagine many other fire companies that are out there. We know exactly what every single asset you have in the building in terms of fire. We know exactly what age it is. We know exactly its condition. We have all the benchmarking on how long those assets generally will last. And so we could tell you, within a very small percentage difference what your likely costs are over the next coming 10 years, but no one ever asks. And that really surprises me. I mean, why not ask and plan rather than rather than wait and react and panic and
I
cause
think,
stress?
well, looking today even at Marion facility management, they had all the kind of like things that you need to think about in a building. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, people are just not aware of exactly what they've got in their, in their actual building, have they? So it's an important element. Thank you, Rob, for your time
Indeed.
today. Much appreciated, and your
Thank
words of
you.
wisdom.